2020 regular meeting of the Hillsborough County City-County Planning Commission. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation are encouraged. To minimize feedback in the audio, all participants in the meeting will be muted until it is their opportunity to speak. Planning commissioners should unmute themselves and turn on their camera to indicate they would like to speak. You can also send a chat to Melissa if you prefer to be recognized that way. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. Please click the raise hand button illustrated on the screen. You will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. Members of the public may also ask questions to staff at any time during the meeting by typing them into the questions chat box illustrated on the lower right hand of the screen. If anyone has difficulties or is watching via HTV and would like to speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, please call telephone number 813-273-3774, extension 359. That's 813-273-3774, excuse me, extension 359. For action items, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following the presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chair. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal or response. Planning commissioners will ask questions. Public comment will then be closed. And then upon a motion, a second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. With that introduction, I will ask that Commissioner Dix lead us in the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear Lord, we want to thank you for today and the blessings that you've given us and for this opportunity to meet here and to do the work of government, and especially for being in the country that is so honoring the opportunities that we have on a day-by-day basis. Please give us guidance and wisdom as we make decisions for the best for the people that we are working with. And we ask for you to continue watching over, giving your blessings to our fellow commissioners. It is in your name we pray. Amen. You'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Dix. At this time, I would ask that the clerk please take the roll call.
Joseph,
Present.
Bernstein,
Here.
Cardenas,
Present. Present.
Dickerson, Dickerson, Dix,
Here.
Dowdy,
Here.
Green,
Present.
Kress, Commissioner Kress, Moreno,
Here.
Powell,
Here.
and Rodriguez.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum, sir.
Sorry.
What was that?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the following meetings. Regular meeting, July 13th, 2020. The regular meeting, August 10th, 2020. The public hearing on county plan amendments, August 10th, 2020. And the public hearing on City of Tampa plan amendments, August 10th, 2020. Do I have a motion from any of the commissioners?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion of approval. A motion of approval by Commissioner Dix and a second by Commissioner Dowdy. Is there any further discussion on the item? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk to take a roll call vote.
Joseph,
Yes.
Bernstein,
Yes.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Dix,
Yes.
Dowdy,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Kress, Moreno,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Motion carried 8-0, sir.
Thank you. All right. On to agenda item number 2, public input. If there's anyone joining us today who wishes to provide comments specifically on items that are not on the agenda or items that are on the agenda but not for action at this meeting, please click the raise hand button at this time to be recognized. You will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait till the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and you will have 3 minutes. I think I see any hands raised. Just double check with Melissa. Nope. All right. Moving on to item number 3. And we have a presentation and status update on the Gibsonton Community Character Profile. And it will be presented by Marianne Abramson and Bob Gray.
Hello, good afternoon, commissioners. I am Marianne Abrahamson, Planning Commission staff. I'm here to introduce Mr. Bob Gray with Strategic Planning Group, who is the consultant for the Gibsonton Community Character Profile. And Mr. Gray will be sharing his screen and going through the presentation with you all.
Can you see the screen?
We cannot see your screen yet. We can see your camera. Let me know if you have difficulties pulling up.
Okay, are we there? Can you see the screen?
That's the, Mr. Gray, if you could just stop sharing and then reshare, maybe that will work. Perfect.
Oh, you can see it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad you can because I can't, so. Let's see how I can do this.
So you're on the study area corridor slide. Is what.
Okay. Let me see if I can. Ah, here we go. It'll be 1 second, I apologize. Let's see, what do we got going here? And I don't know why it's doing this. There we go, hang on, there we go, okay. First of all, let me, this is Bob Gray, Strategic Planning Group. And as we start the presentation, it's a pretty complicated and in-depth study. And so I'm gonna just hit the highlights. I think each of you have the plan itself. But at the start of this, I just wanted to say to thank all the stakeholders. We had over 100 participants that provided input into the plan itself. You all know this, but I just want to reiterate that the purpose of the plan is to provide market and economic development trends to bring basically the data up to date so that we can look and see where we're going to go in the future. It will not change the Gibson Community Plan, and it will not change land use or zoning. That's something, if you want to move forward, will be done later. I've divided the presentation and the report into 3 sections. What we heard, and again, this is basically from a SWOT analysis, what we heard, what we learned in terms of the data. And one of the things I will focus on a little bit is the environmental, because this is a very sensitive area. Then finally, the build out the entire area, and then analysis really of 3 corridors in the overlay district. The corridors are presented here at the very top. We're going to be looking at the Alafaya area. Then we're going to look at US 1 corridor. Then we're going to look at Gibsonton area. And then lastly, we're going to look at basically the residential show overlay and zoning. We did a community workshop on the 28th, and it was very well attended. We also did an internet survey through the month of February. So the data I'm going to present right now is going to separate the two because we don't know who presented on the internet, but you'll see that they're somewhat similar in terms of the high points.
Sorry, if I can interject, sorry, one moment. The slides aren't advancing on our screen, so we just see the study area corridors slide right now.
Can you see that?
So it's still the study area corridor slide that we can see. Sorry to interject. I just don't want everyone to miss out on all the other the slides that you have.
You can't see that slide. The input?
No, possibly, Mr. Gray, you probably, if you have a dual monitor, you're sharing the other monitor, so maybe move the presentation to
the other monitor. Okay. Can you see any of that?
It's still the study areas corridor slide.
Okay, let me try one last thing here.
If not, Mary Ann, if you have the presentation, you can go ahead and get it ready.
Sure.
Mary Ann, let me know when you have it ready and I'll switch presenter mode.
Okay. So let's see here. Can you all see this? I apologize for the technical difficulties.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so I will advance until where I believe you were at. So this is the slide, the last slide, Bob, I believe you were speaking to?
It is. And basically, again, what we're doing is we're presenting 3 things. What we heard from the public, the stakeholders, what we learned in terms of data. And again, I want to stress the environmental because this is a highly sensitive area. And then finally, the built out analysis for the whole area and then the 3 corridors in the overlay. Next slide. Can you do the slide, Marianne?
So can you see the slide up now that says describe Gibsonton?
Okay, let's go from there so we don't get confused. What the slide before you basically is at the community workshop. This is the community's wording of what they thought a one-word description of Gibsonton would be. And as you can see, it's basically very heavily oriented to show people, as they call themselves, carnies. It's historic, show business, but it does show the critical issues, the overcrowding, underserved, trashy, messy, which is their word, forgotten in time, etc. So it is an area that acknowledges it wants its history, but it also has problems. Next slide. In terms of what I've done here is I've separated the 2 SWOT analysis. On the left-hand side where it says community, that's the data we got from the community itself in terms of the workshop, and on the internet, which had more responses, you see the answers there. And I'll start on the community side. Basically, again, we're showing the strengths that the community has, and this was heavily represented by the show business people themselves, but show business, the location, the history, and the zoning of residential show business were all the very high ones. And as you can see, the other potential schools and small businesses. In terms of the internet, broader, it was more locational, again, growing. It had a high level of people that said there's no strengths, but they acknowledged at this point the historic qualities of the area. But again, it shows the importance of the Kearneys and the history overall. Next slide. Could we get the next slide, please?
Yes, the transition to the next slide.
Okay, this
says-
again, the same format. What were the weaknesses? Again, the community in the workshop hit heavily on roads, poor planning, drugs, traffic, blight, and then the sewer and infrastructure, which was sewer, but sidewalk, streets, etc. When we got to the internet, which again represents a lot more people, you saw heavily the roads and traffic and the drugs and crime blighted areas, again, as well as the infrastructure and the street lighting. So again, there's similarities there, but without a doubt, the major weaknesses is roads and traffic. Next slide. Okay, the opportunities here, we wanted them to look out 10 years and basically see, what helped to make this area better. What are the opportunities that were achieved? And again, in the community, it basically was upgraded roads, water, sewer, infrastructure. Again, lights and streets, crack down on drugs, if you will, more show people, and destination tourism, in other words, to capture the Kearney capability and the like. On the internet side, again, it's once again achieving major road improvements and reduction in or success in redeveloping the area, reduction in the crime, and again, all that's interrelated back in with more water and sewer infrastructure. Next, the major threats. In other words, what would stop that dream or that vision to come true would be, in terms of the community, was loss of the atmosphere that currently is there, lack of representation, and that really got back into the lack of recommendations back into the planning and political environment, the need for infrastructure, reducing crime rates, lack of county support itself in the overall program. And again, on the internet, it was definitely drugs and crimes, road and traffic, and overcrowding, and not improving the infrastructure. So again, out of all these, there's definitely a theme about wanting to maintain the historic components of it. But as it grows, we need infrastructure, and there's existing difficulties with traffic and water sewer issues. Next. Gibsonton is a little different than the county as a whole in terms of its makeup. Its median age is 33. It's younger than the county as a whole. It has children by definition. School-age kids are more. And then I think it's also important, as you would expect, that the amount of seniors is less than the county but it does have more Hispanic, 34 versus 30% for the county. So we're dealing with a little different demographic mix. Next. As of 19, the area had just slightly over 6,000 housing units, of which 3,700 were single family. I think, as you'll notice on the next slide, the important thing is to note is the lack of multifamily units, as well as the number of mobile homes in the area. But if you look at occupancy, 63% is owner, 37% of the households are rental occupied. Next. And again, here, this is just to cover what we talked about before in terms of you're on the socioeconomic trends. Again, what we're projecting, a 5-year gain of about 2,000 people or 673. As you're going to see down the line by 35, this area is projected to only have a gain of about 2,000 total units. It's growing faster than the county in terms of population and households, but slightly less in terms of the number of families. Next. Education is critically important for economic development and quality of life. And again, here's the big differences. It has a significantly higher percent of its population that have less than a high school degree. And conversely, on the other side, it only has 17% with a bachelor's degree or higher compared to the county at 32%. So education is a critical component of the area. Next page. It's important to note that this graphic shows where the employment is. And if we're looking at the residents of Gibsonton itself, only 208 actually work and live there, while of the total residents, 7,400 leave Gibsonton every day to work elsewhere. And 25% of that is up in Tampa, 7% in Brandon, and the rest of it is spread all over. And it should be noted that 1,600 workers come from outside the area to work within Gibsonton. And in terms of an industrial space, the area does have significant industrial space, about 1.7 million. But I have to stress that that deals with the area slightly larger than the boundary. Basically, the boundary of the city separates part of Big Bend Road as it hits US 1, and there's a concentration of industrial there too. But as you can see, most of the industrial properties here are along US 41, or if I show down a little bit, would be picking up some on Big Bend. But again, most of the property has really been absorbed most recently. And again, there's some new stuff coming in just south of the area. So Gibsonton can be said to be have a definitely industrial organization as it relates to an end orientation as it defines economic development. Next slide. When we look at office space, that's a whole different story. There's not a lot of office space within the area, and that which exists, or the newer stuff, basically is on Gibsonton. Next slide. When we look at the new properties in terms of things that the brokers would consider Class A properties, there are none within Gibsonton. It does have 8 Class B, ranging from 2 to 8,000. It has 7 Cs, and basically a C is a very old property that doesn't have the facilities of the marketplace today. Total inventory is about 65,000 square feet, and the exception of one property, they are 100% leased. Most of the properties, which is shown by Class B and C properties, were built in the 60s, although some of the new stuff that's coming in and were built last year and coming on board today, again, are in that Gibsonton I-75 area. Okay, next slide. This slide basically shows that the area is underserved. The area to the right of that graphic says this is where the local community is spending money outside the area. Conversely, on the left side, gasoline station and general merchandise, there are actually more sales being done than the community itself is providing. And that, to a large degree, is the gas stations, again, around I-75, and the general merchandise is Walmart. That is not necessarily negative at all. It's saying that basically people are coming from the outside in to shop there. So that has to be viewed in a mixed context. Next. As we transition, and I want to focus on this in a number of slides very, very quickly. It's very environmentally sensitive, as you would probably suspect. This is the high hazard area. It represents over a third of the property of the entire Gibsonton community. Next slide is flood zones. Again, slightly more, but again, areas of risk. Next, significant wildlife, and that's picking up on the southern part, the preserves. So again, we're getting a sense of what really can be developed as we move forward. Next slide. Future connectivity. We had a slide earlier and we dropped it for the sake of speed, but there's very little change between what the existing of the existing connectivity and the future projections are, with the exception of trails. There is again a conceptual trail coming off after Alafaya and then moving down along the electrical lines and like. So again, right now there's not a heavy planning change for connectivity. Next. As I mentioned earlier, schools are critical. The schools in the area have shown improvement as shown on this slide, but again, the bottom line is they're only C's. And again, one would want to see that improve definitely as it affects economic development. People want to move and live where the quality schools are. Next. And this is basically, as of now, I'm not going to go through all these, but this shows the detailed things of capital improvements that are already projected and are working on within the area. So we have a lot of money being expended now and into the near term at about 153 million. And again, a lot of this has to do with some of the roads, widening areas, especially around Big Bend and the like, as well as some improvement to water and sewer lines. So we are addressing some, but perhaps not all the needs of the area. Okay, next, this shows the population density. Again, this is population into acreage, and it does reflect everything you saw earlier in terms of the environmental lands. So basically, it's showing property in and around Gibsonton being the significant growth area, as well as the areas just east of the interstate coming down. So that whole center where it's environmentally sensitive shows low density. Next. Again, as I alluded to earlier, we're expecting, if we look from 2019 through 2035, the county is projecting a population increase of about 6,400 population total, which represents about 2,000 housing units. So there is positive growth, but nothing significant in terms of what the region itself is doing. Next. And this shows the existing land use. You can see that blue, which is the public, quasi-public, it's preserves and other dominate the land use, as does single family. It does reflect, again, the lack of multifamily, the lack of mixed use development within the area. Next. We can basically see from this that we have, in terms of agricultural use, 456 acres available. We highlight that because that has the potential to develop. But you'll also notice there's only 924 acres available that are vacant. So what this says is twofold. First of all, the majority of land is public quasi-institutional at 2,000. You have 1,800 single family and mobile homes, of which mobile homes represent the largest amount. And then you have, as I said, the 920 and the 450. So let's just say around 1,500 acres that could be available for future development without demolishing existing uses. But we don't have heavy industrial commercial properties available right now in terms of existing land use. This shows the zoning. I won't go through it again, but it does not show a significant amount of non-residential development in the like. It's again, you have some of the agriculture, which we highlighted. Excuse me. But it does show, again, the mixed developments along 41, Gibsonton, and Mundy Avenue. And again, minor on the Big Bend, because the Big Bend growth is just outside the boundaries, which is concentrating on Big Bend and 41. This shows the total we wanted to show vacant land by each of the land use categories. So you can see that in the third column, which shows the 938 total acreage, and most of that is in the residential component in terms of baking capabilities. And it shows that if you developed as the future land use does, you could have, again, a maximum DUs of 18,000 dwelling units, which would be a population of really about almost 50,000, 45,000 people, and potentially a non-residential build out of 52 million. That is unrealistic for a whole host of reasons. It's lack of infrastructure, lack of access, the lack of depth of land. But this basically just says if you looked at the FAR itself, you could theoretically develop up to 52 million square feet of non-residential. But again, that's totally non-realistic. Next slide. Again, the build out, we've highlighted here basically the residential area, what it would be with population growth. And again, it's looking at the acreage, the vacant acreage, which is in the residential 4, residential 6, suburban mix 6. So it shows where the potential is for development. Again, I want to stress the non-residential development acreage or square footage is just not realistic. Next. We then focused in on the corridors of the analysis. It says the map itself, you see the hash mark. The hash mark basically says it's vacant. So basically what we're seeing here is predominantly residential 4 properties. There are a total of 323 acres, of which 69 are vacant. You can have a maximum build out of almost 1,400 dwelling units residential in a non-realistic non-residential build out of about 3.7 million square feet. Next is the US 41 corridor, which is the old historic growth corridor for the area. With the I-75, unfortunately, it was impacted negatively. But again, we have 323 acres total, of which 52 is currently vacant. And again, those are shown in the hash marks. It shows a potential for 1,100, almost 1,200 dwelling units within that corridor and 5.9 million square feet of non-residential development. Again, that non-residential development is, again, not necessarily totally not realistic. It just will develop on and depend upon transportation improvements. Next, on Gibsonton Drive, and this is really where everything is happening today, again, because of the interstate connections and the like. And as you can see, again, we have roughly 320 acres, 52 of which are currently vacant. Again, as you can see where those vacancies are, they're separated, which will basically hinder development as we move forward in the future. But we could have 17, almost 1,800 residential units and a potential for 3.5 million square feet. I would say this is the area where it has the greatest potential to grow. But if it does, it's going to require reuse of existing properties and the like. It can't rely just on vacancies to achieve its growth. And again, it's the area where we're already getting development and customers from outside the area, not just within Gibsonton community. And then the last thing we wanted to look at, and we looked at the overlay district, which is of that top matrix and there's within the overall community is within the overlay matrix. So you could have overlay, you could have the residential show business almost anywhere, but it's on a parcel by parcel basis. So when we looked at it as it exists today, there are 73 acres within the overlay that have been designated that, and of those, 30 acres are vacant, We also, in terms of hearing back from our last public hearing, the asking to look at the zoning itself analysis. So we looked at that, and there are 240 acres within the residential zoning district, of which 70 are vacant, and that can handle 1,300 residential units and potentially 2.8 million square feet. So this basically shows up on that graphic where everything is located, whether it's the overlay or the zoning. And that pretty much presents a very quick overview of the study.
So end of the presentation. Okay.
Yeah.
I will open it up to commissioners to see if anyone had any comments or questions on this item. Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is it possible to, well, maybe I don't need the slides. When you were coming up with some of the figures for the growth, specifically for the single family homes and things like that, did that analysis factor in the current utilities that are in place, or would you have been factoring in, upgraded services like, water and sewer and things like that?
Let me answer a couple of ways. It's projected in terms of population, not locational features. And the reason for that is what's going in right now is if you're going in for a PUD, like, you're probably going to have to, at least for that site itself, provide water sewer. But overall, there's no doubt that this area is much in need of water and sewer infrastructure if it to develop really to its fruition.
Absolutely. And that was kind of like my point where, was the study thinking about, okay, we're basing the numbers and the growth patterns and the trends on what's currently, there, or, because I know that the counties had a conversation with, forget the gentleman's name, a few weeks ago. And, with the capital improvements, project, they do have some of the sewer lines, being upgraded there, but it's been on the books and taken off. It's been reclassified, and it's, something new. But I agree that Gibsonton is solely been overlooked, and it cannot be developed whatsoever to its maximum potential, without the sewer upgrades there. And I think that this was any other, parcel of land that was in another area, of Tampa, with all the waterfront that is there, in Gibsonton, there would be nothing but high rises, all over there. Just like Bayshore, in the sense of, with the water views and capabilities. So again, I don't know if you really answered my question on the studies with the trend. Is that, factoring in that actually happening? Or, because to me, if it was there and you did factor it in, I think that the growth would be that much more exponential. Like, it would just, it would boom. Like, I've sold quite a bit of land in Gibsonton and know the majority of all of the larger developers that are over there. And everyone says the exact same thing. We don't have sewer. We don't have sewer. And anyone who wants to do a project over there has to spend, at one point, there was one thing, it was like over $1.5 million to, get some sewer there. And, for a 35 unit project, it obviously makes sense. So just like a little more clarity on that.
Let me answer two ways. First of all, if you had adequate water, sewer, and traffic improvements, they both go hand in hand, okay, you would have the potential for higher numbers than we're showing. Yes.
Okay. All right, that's it. Well, I wish I could see like that presentation too, but thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
We can send the slides out to the commissioners after the meeting if you all would like them.
I would love it, but that's just me.
Yeah, I'll be sure to send
Sounds
those.
good. Are there any more? Oops, Any more comments or questions from the commissioners? Hang on for just a moment. Seeing none, I had a question myself. I was just wondering, Ms. Abrahamson, what are the next steps for this information? We kind of gathered all this data. We did this study. I think it's really excellent. I think we found out a lot of good things and got a lot of good input from the community. So what next?
That's a great question. So the Planning Commission can decide whether or not to transmit this to the Board of County Commissioners and for them to receive a similar presentation so that they also receive the same information that you all have. As you know, the Board of County Commissioners will then decide whether they would like us to take any further steps or do any other type of studies in the Gibsonton area.
Sounds good. I will look forward to that then possibly in the future. All right, thank you very much. And we will move on to our next item. Do you have something on this one, Commissioner Powell, before I officially move on?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I didn't know if that was something that that motion that you were looking for, is that something that we needed to do today? Or is that something that's going to get
brought back up? An action.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Quite honestly, normally at the completion of a study, we would transmit it unless there were issues that you all raised in this presentation, that questions that we needed additional time to address. But hearing none, we will send it to the appropriate folks in the county administration and work on scheduling a presentation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. All right, and we will move with that onto item number 4, which is an action item before us today. It's action item for the City of Tampa 4-year 21 through 25 capital improvement program and capital improvement section schedule of projects update, and it will be presented by Mr. Diego Guerra.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Diego Guerra, Planning Commission staff. This item is the Planning Commission's review of the City of Tampa's FY21 through FY25 capital improvement program and the capital improvement section schedule of projects. This is an action item and a resolution is provided for your vote. The review is conducted in accordance with Chapter 97-351, which requires the Planning Commission conduct an annual review of the city's CIP. Additionally, Chapter 163 of Florida statutes requires that the schedule of projects or the list of projects that addresses level of service and adopted in the comprehensive plan be updated on an annual basis. The update will replace the existing schedule with the schedule located in your packets, and the update is conducted or accomplished by ordinance. As such, Planning Commission staff also conducted a review of the schedule of projects. The review examined the CIP and the schedule of projects for consistency with the City of Tampa's comprehensive plan, as well as the plan of adjacent jurisdictions. Depicted on the screen is a summary of the city's CIP projects. There are 10 program areas, which consist of 113 projects. The total FY21 to FY25 funding amount is approximately $1.38 billion. This chart depicts the same information as the previous slide. However, the percentages are broken out by program area. As you can see, the largest groups in terms of funding are water, wastewater, and stormwater. This slide shows the breakdown of level of service of projects types identified by the city and is consistent with the level of service priorities outlined in the capital improvement section objective 1.3 and policy 1.3.2, which state that the schedule of projects should be planned to both eliminate existing deficiencies and replace worn out facilities. A total of 93% of the projects address replacement of worn out or obsolete facilities and existing deficiencies. Planning Commission staff also looked at projects in the coastal high hazard area. Coastal Management Section Objective 1.4 states that public infrastructure and facilities should be limited in the coastal high hazard area. For those projects with available geospatial data, staff utilized GIS to determine their proximity to the coastal hazard area and determine that there are 42 projects within the coastal hazard area. These projects either renovate, replace existing infrastructure, enhance recreation areas, or serve to enhance protection from hazards such as the construction and maintenance of seawalls. This would be considered minimal construction and ensures the city's property and expenditure is not subject to unnecessary risk. Therefore, the CIP is consistent with CMS Objective Coastal Management Section Objective 1.4. In conclusion, staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the City of Tampa's proposed FY21 through FY25 capital improvement program and capital improvement section schedule of projects consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes my presentation. I am available for questions. City staff were unable to make the meeting this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Guerra. I assume with that statement on the city staff that there's obviously no presentation from the applicant on this one.
That's correct.
So I will move. Thank you. I will move along to public comment. Do we have anybody sign up or any hands for this one?
I do not see any.
Okay. Seeing no comments from the public, I will kick it over to commissioners. Are there any questions or comments on this item from the planning commissioners? All righty, seeing no one appearing, I will go on ahead and open up the floor to a motion from the commissioners on this item. Commissioner Dowdy. Oh, Commissioner Bernstein and Commissioner Green. All right. I will start with Commissioner Dowdy because he popped up first on my screen. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move that the Planning Commission find City of Tampa's proposed fiscal year 21 to 25 CIP and the CIS schedule of projects update consistent with the Imagine 2040 comprehensive plan.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Dowdy for consistency finding. Do we have a second? Commissioner Bernstein, maybe?
Yep, I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have a motion for consistency by Commissioner Dowdy and a second of that motion by Commissioner Bernstein. This time I will ask that the clerk take the roll call vote.
Joseph,
Yes?
Bernstein,
Yes.
Cardenas, Commissioner Cardenas,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Commissioner Dowdy,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Kress, Moreno,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
motion carried 8-0.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to our next item. Item number 5 is also an action item for my commissioners. It is the City of Temple Terrace 4-year 21 through 25 capital improvement program, CIP and capital improvement section, CIS schedule of projects update. And again, we go to Mr. Guerra for this one. He's still there.
Yes, sir. Sorry. Right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Diego Guerra, Planning Commission staff. This item is the Planning Commission's review of the City of Temple Terrace's FY21 through FY25 capital improvement program and capital improvement section schedule of projects update. This is an action item. Resolution is provided for your vote. This presentation is very similar to the one that you just received. The review was conducted in accordance with Chapter 97-351, which requires the Planning Commission conduct an annual review of the City of Temple Terrace's CIP. Chapter 163 of Florida statutes requires that the schedule of projects or the list of projects that address levels of service and adopted in the comprehensive plan be updated on an annual basis, and the update would replace the existing schedule with the schedule located in your packets, and the update is accomplished by ordinance. Planning Commission staff also conducted a review of the schedule of projects. The review examined the CIP and the schedule for consistency with the Temple Terrace Comprehensive Plan and the plans of those adjacent jurisdictions. Depicted on the screen is a summary of the CIP projects. There are 9 program areas which were identified and consist of 235 projects. FY21 through FY25 funding is approximately $40.96 million. This chart depicts the same information as the previous slide with the percentages broken out by program area. As you can see, the largest groups in terms of funding are public safety, water, transportation, and sewer. Staff also analyzed the CIP with respect to the funding source requirements in the comprehensive plan. Capital Improvement Policy 1.5.5 states that general funds should not be used for those facilities with dedicated revenue sources such as potable water, wastewater, and solid waste. After a review of the general fund expenditures, staff found none of these types of projects relied on general funds. Additionally, Capital Improvement Policy 1.5.10 and 1.5.11 state that all projects within the first 3 years of city CIP be funded with committed revenue sources. These include ad valorem taxes, gas taxes, and user charges. Tax reviewed the funding sources and timing and found that the CIP funding was in accordance with the requirements. This slide shows a breakdown of level of service project types identified in terms of level of service priorities, outlined in the capital improvement section 1.1, objective 1.1. As you can see, a total of 97% of the projects address the replacement of facilities and eliminate deficiencies. Staff recommends the Planning Commission find the City of Temple Terrace's proposed FY21 through FY25 capital improvement program and capital improvement section schedule of projects consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Imagine 2040 Temple Terrace Comprehensive Plan. This concludes my presentation. Myself and city staff are available for any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Guerra. I will go ahead and open it up to the public for comments. I don't see any hands on my end. Do you have any signups or hands on your end, Melissa? Nope.
No, I do not.
Okay. All right, seeing no comment from the public, I will hand it over to my commissioners for comments or questions on this item. Seeing no one appearing, I will then close the comment section here and open up the floor to entertain motions from the commissioners on this item.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Green. I'll make that
Yes,
motion.
Commissioner
I'd like to make a motion finding of the Temple Terrace fiscal year 21 to 25 capital improvement program consistent with the 2040 Imagine 2040 comprehensive plan.
Commissioner Green, I cannot hear you on the audio, sir. If you can speak a little louder.
Thank you. I'd like to make the motion to find the Temple Terrace fiscal year 21-25 capital improvement program consistent with the Imagine 2040 comprehensive plan.
All right, I got a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Green. Do I hear a second to that motion?
I'll
Mr.
second that
Dowdy?
motion, Commissioner Dowdy.
All right, I have a motion for consistency finding by Commissioner Green and a second to that motion by Commissioner Dowdy. At this time, I'll ask that the clerk take the roll call vote for this item.
Joseph,
Yes?
Bernstein,
Yes.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Dix,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Press, Moreno,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Motion carried 8-0, sir.
Thank you. All right. Next item up is item number 6, and it is also another action item for voting for my commissioners. This one is 2020 through 21 tentative 5-year work plan for the Hillsborough County Public School System. The presenter for this one is Krista Kelly, or perhaps Amber Dickerson.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, hi.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Krista.
I just wanted to introduce the item today for the board's consideration. Based on an interlocal agreement between the Hillsborough County's 4 jurisdictions in the school district, the Planning Commission is asked to review the tentative school 5-year facilities work plan each year for consistency with those jurisdictions' comprehensive plans. The school board has adopted the facilities plan with the intent to provide adequate capacity at those facilities. Ms. Amber Dickerson, with Manager of Growth Management for the school district, is here to present the plan for 2020-2021 through 2024 to 25, and she's also here to answer any questions you might have. Following the presentation, staff will present a consistency finding and ask the Planning Commission to take action. And I'll turn it over now. Thank you.
Hi, all. Are you able to see my screen, my presentation?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, great. Thank you. So, Amber Dickerson, General Manager of Growth Management. Thank you for the opportunity to present our 5-year work plan today. Just to outline our objectives, we want to go through the 5-year plan. We want to talk about some siting issues, the critical needs for school sites, and assess the consequences of no future school sites, and kind of how we're moving this conversation on. This is our tentative work plan. As you know, we opened 2 schools this year, which is huge. A high school named Sumner in South County, and then also Belmont Elementary in the Belmont subdivision. We will be actually replacing Tampa Heights Elementary, which is formerly known as Lee Elementary. And so we're reconstructing that with those insurance funds. Then in year 2, we're hoping to do a high school addition at Spoto High School, and then one at Waimama Elementary School. Then moving forward to year 3, a new PK through 8 at Waterset within the development. Also 2023 and 24, year 4, possibly doing an addition at Collins Elementary School using a property north of our current site. We're trying to work out a land deal with the county because right now that's a Parks and Rec site. And then a new Manhattan PK through 8 on a property that we already own in South Tampa. And lastly, a partially funded high school to be determined. We do have 2 sites. We own one, Bishop Road in South County, that could potentially be used for this site, or we have one under contract as well. So this is just a different way to look at the same information split up by grade level. And then talking about project revenues, this picture is a lot less bleak than it was before. We got a sales tax referendum, yay, that will bring in $550 million over a 5-year period. In addition, we did get an impact fee increase as well. So our financial outlook is looking a lot better than before. Also, just some miscellaneous capital expenditures. We plan to have modulars due to growth. Bus purchases, we're adding more kids, we're adding more buses. Site purchases, this is a larger value than we've had historically because we know we need new school sites, and now we finally have the funds to purchase sites. Then, of course, health and safety is a big topic and issue moving forward with COVID. So this slide is very important. So highlighted in blue are the sites reserved within approved planned developments. In orange is the one site I referenced earlier that we actually own, and that consists of 60 acres or 65 acres. We picked up 2 pieces there. We recently received the county's review of the 5-year work plan, and they really encouraged us to locate in the planned developments that are located in blue. However, these planned developments do have some challenges. First of all, the school district doesn't own these sites. So we have to actually negotiate with developers for a conveyance of these sites and agree on the terms such as the actual purchase price and conditions and timing. Also, timing of these school sites. Some of these sites are located within the center of a PD development. Therefore, they do not have current access. And then all of them, as you can see in red, are located on substandard roads. Acreage. None of the sites on this list, other than the one we own, have ample site room for a high school. So a high school actually requires at least 50 acres. So only the Bishop Road property and the West property, which is under contract right now, would have room for a high school. Also, desirability. Oftentimes, the PD sites may not be exactly where we need a site per the students we're trying to serve. So at the end of the day, there are no current sites that have adequate transportation infrastructure to support schools in South County, and that is a problem we must address. We cannot depend on reserved planned development school sites alone to solve the issue, as they have their own challenges, and quite frankly, there just are not enough locations overall. So how did we get here? For a long time, the district didn't have any money through the impact fees. We were only collecting really half of what was required to build schools. So we didn't go out to buy property for a very long time. And I want to thank the Planning Commission and the county and everyone involved for increasing the school impact fee. That will definitely help the status of schools in this neighborhood. However, it's no secret that there's also a transportation infrastructure problem in South County, which is now negatively impacting school infrastructure to serve students that are moving into the area. We quite frankly are stuck between a rock and a hard place because we are legally prohibited from using school funds to build non-adjacent roadways, yet we need schools to serve new students. And again, there are no properties in this area that are located on non-substandard roadways. So the consequences, we have no school sites to spend the increased impact fee funds to build new schools. The development community, unfortunately, will soon be impacted because without new projects to pay towards, the school district will no longer be able to process mitigation agreements, which translates to approved developments not being able to move forward. Also, overcrowding of schools has major negative impacts to students, staff, and the community, and basically create very politically tough issues as well. We may have to do double sessions, which would mean different grades would have different bell times, which would truly be a nightmare for all involved. So we must build new schools. Per the long-range plan, we will need to build on average at little over 2 schools per year to keep pace with growth. By this time next year, we will have to squeeze close to 3,000 new students onto existing campuses that are already overcrowded. So we know that there is no easy solution to transportation issue in South County. It basically always comes down to what it always does, funding. But we also need to build new schools. The students from the approved development, which is also located on substandard roadways, are literally surrounding the property that we own on Bishop Road. So all of that red and pink that you see around the blue polygon, the blue's the site that we own, the red's already approved development, they're building today. So we actually had an opportunity to present this at the Board of County Commissioners last week, and our suggestion was to create a task force. As we all know, public education is the foundation of any thriving community, as you saw in the presentation today. And this is a community issue. We cannot solve this issue by working in silos, and time is of the essence. So we are suggesting to create a public school siting task force consisting of both decision makers and topic experts. At first, we will need to meet frequently to get some momentum on this issue. I'm confident that the talent and aptitude of this team will have the ability to tackle this most important issue. Bottom line, we have to come up with some creative solutions. Either allow schools to be located on substandard roadways or find funding sources to develop the transportation infrastructure that is required to develop schools. We should not make the decision to force students to attend extremely overcrowded schools because transportation infrastructure is extremely underfunded, which we all know is a massive problem with no solution in sight. So thank you very much for your time to present today. You can find our tentative work plan in its entirety at the link below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Action item, yes. So I will take it to the public and see if there is anybody signed up for public comments on this item. I don't see any hands raised on my end. Nope, not from Melissa, no. All right, then I will open it up to the, Melissa?
I do believe that Krista was going to give our consistency finding.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Krista, sorry.
Oh, no problem. Staff has reviewed the school district's 5-year facilities plan for 2021 to 24-25 and finds it consistent with the comprehensive plans of Hillsborough County and the future of Tampa, Temple Terrace, and Plant City. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the resolution finding the proposed facilities plan consistent with the county's and city's comprehensive plan and forward that recommendation to the Hillsborough County School Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Okay. Now I will, I guess, reopen it up to public comments, which there were none signed up. I still see no hands. So we'll move on to the commissioners. Questions or comments from the commissioners? All right. There's one in at the last second. Commissioner Powell, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amber, I was curious on with the site selection that the school board is going to be putting together the committee. With the current sites that the board has right now, are there a lot that you all have that are not actually built on yet? They're just like vacant land that's like waiting to be built?
So the current situation is, like I stated, we didn't have really a lot of money to pursue properties. So really going back to this slide, this is truly our inventory of school sites right now. So we have 4 in PDs. We have 1 that we own, 65 acres, and then we have 1 under contract, which is 100 acres. So all of the ones in blue, we could fit either an elementary or a middle. Those are all vacant within PDs. Bishop Road's also vacant, but we could put 2 schools, potentially an elementary and a middle, or a high school on that site, and same with the west property as well. So that is our inventory right now.
Okay, so like,
Please reshare your screen.
Okay, I'm gonna have to. Doesn't seem like my buttons are working. I'm clicking on them, I swear. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not working. So we have 4 different PD properties ranging from 15 acres to 30 acres. And then our Bishop Road site 65 and west is 100. My apologies for not being able to reshare.
it's okay. I was just curious, based on that. I don't recall how many months it was, but there was a site that the board had out in Lithia. I think it was off of Lithia Pinecrest in that area, like in Fishhawk. And it was a site that, if memory serves me correct, was given to you all from a developer. And then you in turn, decided to sell it, which I don't recall the reasons for that. But I just didn't know if, I still don't know really why that site, was sold when there's such a need, for schools. But maybe it was a site challenge of some sort. So going forward, you all still have, a lot of those similar issues with current land that you have that are like site challenges that you just can't find an engineer that can drop a school somewhere because of, whatever, reasons. So I was just curious on that.
Yeah, I mean, all of the ones on the list currently are viable sites. The Lithia Pinecrest site had a few different issues of why we actually sold that site. One being that the way that it was situated on the roadway, we were really concerned from a safety aspect of buses going in or in out, and also pedestrians, because it's on a pretty severe angle, and the way that the property is situated. In addition, when we actually made the decision to surplus that site, we did not have the sales tax referendum, and we did not have the impact fee increase. And at that time, we were in a budget crisis. And so the superintendent at the time really wanted us to move forward with surplusing that site.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Powell. Was there any other questions from any of the other commissioners? I did have a couple questions. Well, one question for you, Ms. Dickerson, probably one question for our staff. I noticed in the projections, when I looked at the total cost, the total money that's being requested, and then I looked at some of the changes in the map that are going to happen between now and what's supposed to be in 2025, I noticed that right now we're kind of at a razor's edge when it comes to capacity and funding. We're very precarious. And I noticed that when you go to 2024, 25, we're still kind of in that same precarious situation. It's not like we put all this money forth and made a plan, and then all of a sudden it all comes back down to green and everything's happy. It's still what could you speak to that? Why that's that way?
Absolutely. So what we do is we are provided with impact fee projections from the county. We want to be conservative in this plan because we do not know the residential fallout of COVID. We can't predict that. So anything that we place in 1 to 3 years, basically the development community can bank on that as being built. Therefore, if a development comes through and we have, let's say, 5 projects in the first 3 years, they get to count those as if they were built. So we, as the school district, have to be mindful that we must have those funds and we must build those schools within the first 3 years. So in the next round of the 5-year plan, we'll probably get a better feel of whether we're going to experience a recession, if it's going to be severe or not severe, and then we can make those assumptions. Also, our sales tax, we dialed back a little as well, because we have been taking a hit on the sales tax due to COVID.
Okay. All right. My only other question, and this might be better posed to staff. I think you did Ms. Dickerson, I think you did an excellent job of laying out the issues with infrastructure in South County and how those issues are going to directly impact schools going forward. Mr. Onita, we do a great job here at our organization of facilitating information to, other county agencies and also to the Board of County Commissioners. I looked through the comp plan myself and I didn't see a lot of direction when it came to education. And maybe that's for good reason. Maybe that's areas planners tend to back away from. There are a couple policies and a couple light directional steps, but I noticed overarchingly, education as a topic is not something that we dive too deep into policy-wise. And I'm not talking about the day-to-day handling of education. That's obviously the school board. I'm talking more at a community wishes. What does the community want for the educational future of itself, right? That's what I'm speaking of when I talk about our organization. When we go out and we do these surveys, like the SPG survey we just saw for the Gibsonton community, we dig in deep and we find out what the community wants to see for its future. I don't get that sense when it comes to education necessarily in our current documents. I wanted you or staff to speak to, why it's kind of like that and if it's possible for that to possibly change in the future.
So the school facilities element was added to the comprehensive plan in the late 2000s and was a requirement of statute to institute school concurrency. And at the time, that was a really big step forward for our community. But the element, which is virtually the same for all 4 local governments, because we have a countywide school system and a countywide system for school concurrency, the elements are basically the same. There's a couple of differences, but they're pretty minor. Those elements have not really have never evolved beyond that, that first cut at them. So that certainly is an area of opportunity to look at some of what initially were, broad. We want to make sure schools are compatible and, we address, a couple of big picture things like inside the urban service area is preferred as opposed to outside. But we didn't really get a lot deeper than that into some of the perhaps locational issues. I think some of what we're seeing is that there are some gaps clearly in the level of coordination that's called for and then what's come to fruition. And there's certainly an opportunity there for us to improve the process of school siting and planning. And I know Ms. Dickerson and I've had a lot of conversations about these types of improvements that could be made not only in the comprehensive plan, but also in the interlocal agreements that implement this.
All right. Yeah, I'd like to see that. I think that's precisely what I'm talking about. I tend to think of our role too, besides, kind of land use and where things go on the land. The county commissioners kind of like to have us to look back and say, well, what's the community? What are the community desires? And when it comes to education, the comp plan is not a great place to look to and say, okay, well, this is what the community want. We need to put money into infrastructure because the community believes safe streets and pedestrian design is what they want in the future. If we have that kind of thing, I think it makes it a lot easier for the elected officials to say, okay, well, we need to really focus on this because the community is crying for this, you know what I mean? So I definitely like to see that. And we'll talk about that more as we go forward. That's all for me. Great presentation. And at this point, I will close the public comments, I guess, if there are no more comments from my commissioners, and I will entertain a motion on this item. Commissioner Bernstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move that we vote in favor of finding the 5-year tentative work plan for the Hillsborough County Public Schools to be consistent with the goals, plans, and objectives of the Imagine 2040 Comprehensive Plan and pass it along to the County School Board for their consideration.
Second. I would second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right. right, I have a motion for consistency by Commissioner Bernstein and a second by Commissioner Dix. Is there any more comment on this item? Seeing no more comments or discussion, I will ask that the clerk take a roll call vote.
Joseph,
Yes.
Bernstein,
Yes.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Dix,
Yes.
Dowdy,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Press, Moreno,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Motion carried 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to our next item. Item number 7 is also an action item for voting. And this is the Hillsborough County Land Development Code Amendment, LDC 20-0720, wastewater facility connection. The presenters are Unique Mills and Mr. Israel Monsanto.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Unique Mills, Planning Commission staff. I'm here to introduce to you Mr. Israel Monsanto, as well as Mr. Joe Moretta, who will be presenting Land Development Code Amendment 20-020, excuse me, 20-0720, which was continued from the last Planning Commission meeting. And this is an action item for you all to vote on today. And without further ado, Mr. Israel Monsanto.
I believe I was going to
Commissioners, can you hear me?
some discussion initially before Israel gets in. My name is Joe Moretta, Development Services Department. I've met most of you, some of you not. This is not my first time at the Planning Commission, but it's the first time at the Planning Commission from a back room in my house. So welcome to the new world. Commissioners, this was heard initially in a consistency finding context at the last Planning Commission. And previous to that, it was heard also in a workshop. This item came to our staff from the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners essentially asked our staff to prepare an amendment to the Land Development Code to eliminate the exception that's currently in the urban service area regarding wastewater connection. Right now, the connection requirement for wastewater in the urban service area provides an exception for 2 lots or equivalent flows of 2 lots. And what they've asked to do is us to eliminate that. It's a fairly straightforward amendment that doesn't really allow much leeway in terms of altering it. It's basically you want to eliminate the exemption or you don't, but that's not a question necessarily what I'm trying to put out before you in terms of a mandate. What I'd like to do is just provide a context for it and what it will apply to it, what it will not apply to. It's not intended to apply to anything that's been appropriately subdivided prior to the effective date of this, if it were to be approved. And when I say approved, it's also been, asked of us to prepare it for consideration. So it still has to go through another public hearing. And this is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a done deal. So again, going back to what it will apply to, it will apply to anything that has not been subdivided at this time or developed at this time. And so, for example, if somebody has an existing home, they want to build an accessory dwelling, they can do that, and they can do it with a septic tank. If somebody has a vacant lot, and that lot is cut prior to the time that this is effective, they can still do that if the lot was cut pursuant to the exemption requirements. Also, when the utility connection is run for the new lot, if it goes past someone's home that has a septic tank, they're not going to be required to connect. And it seemed like at the last meeting, there was some questions as to whether or not the applicability of this would be imposed on people that either want to make an expansion to their home or that have a line that may run in front of their home. So I wanted to make that clear. It's been valuable that this has been sent back to us because we did have a meeting with our leadership team, and it's allowed us to work through a few things and get back with you in light of what happened the last meeting and explain things in a different way. And obviously, if there's anything that the Planning Commission sees that needs additional attention, we do have time to focus on that between now and the time we take this to the public hearing for the board, which is September 24th. And obviously, the board can, use the value of whatever comments are said today in terms of their deliberations as they work through this. So we do need to take this back for another public hearing. I just wanted to explain what it is intended to apply to, what it's not intended to apply to. And it's generally just to eliminate the exemption in the urban service area. The urban service area, as Melissa and her staff can probably better than I tell you, is generally an area where the county is directing the investments and the requirements for urban level infrastructure. And just looking at that, the thought was that allowing septic tanks to proliferate in this area was not something from a policy perspective that was sought to be continued. So having said that, I'm either available for questions. Israel also has a brief PowerPoint, and we can move forward with this however you'd like. But I'm available, and Israel's also available.
Thank you, sir.
Should I get off the camera and get out of the way, or?
I have, this is Israel Monsanto. I have the PowerPoint on the screen. I think you're seeing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I think Mr. Moreta explained it and clarified it specifically. So if you have any questions or comments, we are available to take those.
So I don't see any public comment, but if anybody in the public wishes to speak, they can raise their hand.
All right, before I go forward, the comments, am I to understand that the finding by staff is still the same finding as last time? So nothing's changed, we're just redoing this one, okay. Because I didn't hear necessarily what the staff's input was, so. Okay.
I apologize for that. Yes, staff did find this consistent, that finding did not change.
Thank you. All right, and you said there's no one signed up from the public, and I don't see any hands. So we will go to our commissioners for comments and questions on this item. I am not seeing any commissioners appearing, so I will close the public comment section of this and open, Commissioner Dowdy, you have comments or are you making a motion?
No, I was going to comment again, and I apologize, Joe, that I stepped away for a minute, so you may have already covered this. I mean, we talked a bit about this at our last meeting, having an issue with perhaps creating a hardship for some folks. So can you describe again, I think I did hear you say something to the effect of that you weren't intending to create that situation, but I think that was one of my worries about it, that there were areas that it might create a hardship for somebody who was trying to either build a small home for their whether a senior father or for a son or whatever like that, and then having to connect to a utility line that actually didn't exist in front of their home right
now. The way the ordinance is configured, if the home was on an existing lot that was cut prior to the effective date of this ordinance, if it's approved, then they would not have to connect. If it's an accessory dwelling on an existing lot with an existing home, an existing septic tank, they would not have to connect. If it's on a new lot that's cut after the effective date of this ordinance, then the thrust of it would be to require a connection.
Okay, so let me throw a hypothetical out. Let's say you have a lot, current home, an existing lot that's on septic, but it's a large lot, and you divide it after this ordinance. The new home would have to connect with the existing home, would not?
The new lot would need to connect. The existing home would not.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Dowdy. No one else? Anyone else? Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? I didn't see anyone else pop up, so I will reopen. Oh, Commissioner Green, do you have a question, comment on this one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a quick question for Joe. Do you have any idea what's the impact of this ordinance? I mean, how obviously this will slow the rate of let's say septic connections, let's say, but do we have any idea what the real impact is? I mean, is this in other words, is this a common occurrence that this ordinance is trying to sort of slow down or eliminate, or?
Well, when the urban service area provisions were implemented through the concurrency requirements in the code, there was an exemption for the 2 lots, but there was also an added lot size requirement is a ½ acre. So notwithstanding your zoning, you may have a much smaller lot than ½ acre. You may have a ¼ acre or 5,000 square foot lot, 7,000 square foot lot, and you would have to bump that up to ½ an acre. And that exemption was limited to 2 lots, and it was done that way to dissuade any development that was going to occur in an area where the county was directing urban level investments and requiring connections on urban level facilities to try to maintain, the underutilization, to try to protect against the underutilization of the urban service area. In terms of prospective development or future development and what that impact may be, no, I don't really have any statistics or any data on what that may be. Planning Commission may be able to tell you in terms of, the amount of available acreage in the urban service area, but I don't have that data available, and I'm not sure the Planning Commission would have it, since I just threw that out there at this second either. It would certainly be applicable to something that would, if this is adopted, would be in the future. Not anything that's already been subdivided, not anything that's existing, and not anything where someone's going to add on to their house or build an accessory dwelling.
Okay. So relative to Commissioner Dowdy's concerns, the scenario that he raised, those people would be sort of grandfathered in, so to speak.
They would be recognized as something that was already reviewed, already approved for use with septic. As long as they, meet all the requirements that were in place for that exemption, then they would be allowed to continue with their permitting process and build their home or their business, whatever they've been approved for.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Green. Are there any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Just a moment here. Camera shy. Seeing none, then I will officially open up the close the public comment section, and open up the floor to entertain motion from the commissioners on this item. Do I have a motion on this one? Commissioner Bernstein, yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move that we vote in favor of finding Hillsborough County Land Development Code Amendment number LDC 20-0720, the wastewater facility connection consistent with the goals, plans, and objectives of the Imagine 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
All right, I have a motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Bernstein and a second to that motion by Commissioner Green. There's no more discussion on the item. Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to take the roll call vote.
Joseph,
Yes.
Bernstein,
Yes.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Dix, Commissioner Dix, Dowdy,
No.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Kress, Moreno,
Yes.
Powell,
No.
motion carried 5-2. Commissioner Dowdy and Commissioner Powell voted no.
I think that both Commissioner Dix and Commissioner Kress are on the line. Maybe we could see if we can hear them to add their votes.
Yes, ma'am, we can redo the vote.
Well, I don't know. We're having trouble hearing Commissioner Dix.
I think he's giving you a visual.
I know. I'm not sure that that counts.
Unfortunately, I can't do a visual. I actually have to have a voice with his vote.
No, we cannot hear you.
This is Commissioner Kress. I just logged on, so I didn't hear the discussion.
Oh, okay. If you prefer not to vote, that's fine.
No. Well,
Is Commissioner Dix able to get on?
He is shown as his microphone is live and he is on. Commissioner Dix, is it possibly unplugged or your volume's down?
I'm gonna call in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he needs the number.
Okay, he's gonna call back in, but I don't know.
All right, he's waving us off, it looks like.
He's okay.
Melissa, if I can have at least on the video, because I guess you guys are recording it, as long as I have the video, we will go ahead and accept that. So I either need a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Okay.
Thumbs down. Okay.
Okay. We'll make sure you get a copy of the video.
Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Okay, Melissa, if I can just have you state on the record that Commissioner Dix voted no, just so that we can have it coming from you.
Yes, I visually saw Commissioner Dix voting no.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Motion carried 5-3. Commissioner Dix, Dowdy, and Powell voted no.
Okay. Great.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Planning Commission staff.
All right, after all that excitement, on to our next action item here. Oh, actually, this is not an action item. This is an item for no action. It's just a presentation, and it is the 2018 through 2023 Plan Hillsborough Strategic Plan 6-month report on implementation by Ms. Melissa Dickens.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, commissioners. This is Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. Are you all able to see my screen or do I need to reshare it? You can see it?
We are seeing your screen.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, this is an update report on the progress that staff has been making towards implementation of the 2018 through 2023 Plan Hillsborough Strategic Plan. And before I get started on the content, I want to thank Katrina Corcoran on our staff for the tremendous amount of collection of all this information and also assistance putting together the presentation. Some background on the strategic plan. The strategic plan was adopted, excuse me, I'm sorry, I messed up my GoToMeeting. One moment, please. Just trying to click it. Okay, is it back to the slideshow?
It's always been on the slideshow.
Oh, okay. It changed on my end, so I'm glad you all didn't have that happen. Thanks for your patience. Again, the strategic plan, it was last updated and adopted in 2018. The strategic plan outlines the near-term objectives and short-term direction for our agency. This strategic plan is the first time it has been collectively and collaboratively developed by all three boards that Plan Hillsborough staff serves. And the strategic plan contains 7 agency-wide strategic priorities. These strategic priorities reflect the broad range of work that staff at the Planning Commission, MPO, and the River Board conduct. And this year at our staff retreat, we broke up into different staff teams and focused on an area of focus within these strategic priorities. So we wanted to take the time within the first 6 months since this retreat to really dive a little bit deeper into some aspects of the strategic plan. So today I'm going to be reporting on what the staff task groups have worked on and put together over the last 6 months. And then later in the year or early next year, we'll have a much more full, comprehensive annual report that contains additional information related to the strategic plan. The first strategic priority is linking land use and transportation. And the area of focus that staff selected was working on revisions to comprehensive plan policies to support a focus on centers and corridors as areas for future growth. And this staff team came up with a great acronym. Planners, of course, love acronyms. This is Strategies for Transportation Alternatives and New Development Scenarios, or STANS. And this group has been working on a number of GIS maps that look at land use, affordable housing, and transportation systems. They also put together an affordable housing and TOD white paper. I believe that you all have a copy of that in your packet as part of the housing element update as well. There is also all of this ongoing work is helping to inform the overall update to the Unincorporated Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. Staff have been utilizing this information in their working groups and their meetings, and we're excited to continue moving forward with this project. And then other research, such as research on equity, on connectivity, is also supporting this initiative. For the next strategic priority, planning partnerships, the area of focus that staff chose to look at was to look at our Speakers Bureau efforts and expand that concept to other planning topics and other initiatives. So the first step was to do a call out to staff to collect previous presentations that have been given. Our staff does present to a wide variety of audiences. We wanted to have those in a central repository so that if staff was presenting on a topic, there wasn't the need to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. We also surveyed staff to find out which topics they received the most questions on. So things like, what is a comprehensive plan? What is a community vision? How do I get involved in the planning process? And then we're working on developing PowerPoints that address some of these questions and staff presentations to different audiences. Also working on creating an ADA-friendly template, and those new PowerPoints should be available by the end of the calendar year. And then finally, even in a virtual environment, staff continues to present at state, local, and national webinars and virtual conferences. The next strategic priority is citizen engagement, and the area of focus for that effort is giving more real-world examples of planning project implementation at events. Of course, this area of focus was selected pre-COVID and pre-virtual events, but we've still been able to do a lot of work related to this strategic priority. We purchased some new camera equipment that's allowed for some short videos that help us communicate projects, get more hits on social media, and reach more of our community to get their input on what we're working on. We've done this for both the One Water and the virtual public outreach, and also a video highlighting the Day of Unity intersection mural project. Additionally, our Planning and Design Awards, we've pivoted to be virtual this year, so we'll still get to look at how some of these projects are being implemented in the community virtually. We continue to have virtual outreach meetings and events for our planning projects, and the Plan Hillsborough newsletter is now mobile friendly. So that's easier for citizens to see on the go, or if they're coming to an event or trying to find more information, that'll make it easier for them as well. Opportunities for regional collaboration is the next strategic priority, and the area of focus there was looking at opportunities to collaborate on planning and projects near or crossing jurisdictional boundaries. So there were a few ways that the staff team worked on this item, bringing together staff from different departments to address trails and preserves. Ongoing meetings with adjacent counties on land use and transportation and collaboration on those efforts. One Water was presented at a TBRPC webinar and an Agency on Bay Management meeting as a blueprint for others in the region. And the context classification recent amendment, staff worked to pull together a multi-jurisdictional staff team to discuss this amendment and review it. Technology and innovation. For this topic, staff in their area of focus was looking at a pilot project to show how data can be effectively utilized. So one of the first things that was done was creating a digital meeting sign-in form. Of course, now all meetings are digital, but when we do return to the office, this will be a great way to collect data on who is attending the meetings, what areas of the communities are represented. Are there areas of the community that are not attending meetings, and how can we address that? So it helps us have the data that we need to develop a plan to make sure that we're reaching more of our community. The folks working on technology and innovation have also been instrumental in pivoting us for success at remote work through training and use of various video conferencing software. We're experimenting with features like polling and breakout groups in Zoom. They've also done a great job with seamless communication virtually for all our staff, and then again, continued public engagement efforts in a virtual environment. The next strategic plan focus is enabling transportation choices. And for this area, the staff team chose to explore emerging technologies in transportation. So these could be things like autonomous and connected vehicles, electric vehicles, and shared mobility, and looking at the implications for the future of surface transportation. So a few things the staff group has been working on: creating a central repository of research documents for staff to look at on these topics. They've also been hard at work creating infographics with information on autonomous vehicles and shared mobility to help the public understand a little bit more about these technologies. Those were also made ADA compliant. And then an emerging transportation choices webpage will be added to the website, and that is forthcoming. And finally, the last area of focus is internal agency enhancements. And this group chose to focus on staff effectiveness and skills related to cooperation and teamwork. So interestingly, this becomes all the more important in the virtual environment. But our teams have found a way to really take advantage of the virtual platforms and still continue to build teamwork, even if we're all working in our own homes. One of the things we've been working on is a Day in the Life series, where we feature 3 different staff members who talk a little bit about their day-to-day projects and tasks. And also this has evolved a little bit over time to include sharing why people got interested in planning, what their hobbies are outside of work. And it's been a really nice way for staff to learn a little bit more about our colleagues and also understand a little bit more about the work that they do. There's also been a process for staff to attend division director meetings to listen in on some of the topics that senior leadership is discussing. We continue to have the cross-team liaisons, attending different meetings, making sure that communication is happening across teams, reporting back. And then there have been a number of virtual morale committee events. So we've had virtual bingo, we've had retirement and fellow farewell send-offs over Zoom, and then we've also had some staff trivia to try to keep the morale up when everyone is working remotely. And this does conclude my presentation today. I will presentation at the likely at the beginning of 2021, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on our 6-month implementation efforts. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Dickens. Not an action item, so I will send it over to the commissioners for any questions or comments they may have on this presentation. Seeing none at this point in time, I would just like to say for myself, good job, Ms. Dickens. Look forward to seeing the next round of information on these strategic strategies as they go forward. And with that, we will continue on to our next item. Item number 9 is a briefing on unincorporated Hillsborough County plan amendments. The first item A, 9A, HCCPA 2015 Future Land Use Map Amendment will be presented by Will Augustine.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Will Augustine, Planning Commission staff. Is my screen visible to you all?
Yes, it is.
This plan amendment is located in north central Hillsborough County along Mango Road, just north of Martin Luther King Boulevard. It's located within the urban service area. The subject site is a privately initiated map amendment in north central Hillsborough County, which is approximately 19.5 acres in size. The aerial shows that the surrounding area is predominantly single-family homes. The land use of residential 4, residential 6, and residential 9 are the predominant land uses in the area. The subject property is north of the Mango Road, Martin Luther King Boulevard intersection. US Highway 92 and Interstate 4 are to the north. Interstate 75 is to the west, and Taylor Road is to the east. The subject site has an adopted quasi-public land use classification. The large public, quasi-public parcel immediately to the south is Mango Elementary School. The areas along Mango Road include public, quasi-public, park and recreational, and residential uses. The areas along Martin Luther King Boulevard are a mixture of office, commercial, and residential uses. Residential 4, residential 6, and residential 9 are the predominant land uses of the surrounding properties. Currently on the site is St. Francis of Assisi Church, along with a separate office and rectory building. The applicant is requesting a residential 9 land use change. The currently adopted land use classification of public, quasi-public doesn't allow any dwelling units on the 19.5 acre site. The land use change to residential 9, the subject site would have a potential build out of up to 175 dwelling units. Suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office, or multipurpose projects are limited to a build out of up to 175,000 square feet or a floor area ratio of 0.50. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Augustine. Are there any comments or questions on this item from the commissioners? Seeing no one appearing. Oh, well, thank you for your time, Mr. Augustine, and we will move on to the next item, another briefing, item 9B, and it's HCCPA 20-16, Future Land Use Map Amendment, and the presenter will be Krista Kelly. Hello.
Thank you, Commissioner. Krista Kelly, Planning Commission staff. I'm presenting CPA 2016. This is a privately initiated map amendment. As you can see, the site is just east of Tampa, a little southeast of Temple Terrace. It is in the rural service area, and it is also within the boundary of the East Lake Orient Park Community Plan boundary. It's approximately a third of a mile north of I-4, and it's bounded on the eastern side of the site by I-75. The Tampa Executive Airport is also adjacent to the site to the west. This is an aerial of the site where you can see the airport, I-75 and I-4. The site initially was submitted as a 221.6 acre project area. In further discussions, the applicant has reduced the acreage size by eliminating one parcel, the southern L-shaped parcel down here, which is approximately 30 acres, making the total project area 191 acres. There are wetlands on the site, and EPC is assessing those impacts. Currently, the site's used for agricultural purposes. And as you can see, surrounding the site to the east and south and southeast, this area is agricultural and rural residential. The character of the area changes with the establishment of the Tampa Executive Airport to the west. You can see industrial uses and other non-residential uses extending westward. Currently, the site's designated residential 1. The airport is designated public, quasi-public, and then the remaining of the area north of I-4 is also residential 1. The applicant's requesting a change to light industrial planned. As you can see, this land use category is not in existence in this area. However, there are industrial properties, again, to the west of the site. The impact of this change based on 191 acres, basically it would eliminate residential use of the site, and it would also allow for, at a maximum, 0.62 million square feet of industrial uses. I might add that in an assessment of the typical build out, we found that countywide, the light industrial planned category builds out to 0.088. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Ms. Kelly, were there any questions or comments from the commissioners on this one? All right. Seeing none, I will thank you, Ms. Kelly, and we will move on to our next item on the agenda. Item number 10 is a non-action item. It is the presentation of the Unincorporated Hillsborough County comprehensive plan update for the housing element. Before I introduce the presenter, I just wanted to take a moment to remind my commissioners that this is not an action item. This item is being brought before us today to get all of our input on this housing element as it goes forward through revision. So I would encourage everyone to definitely speak up. If you have any thoughts, ideas, go on ahead and throw them out there. It doesn't matter how crazy they are. Now's the time, right? So with that introduction, I will go ahead and turn it over to the presenters, Ms. Jennifer Malone and Ms. Marian Abrahamson.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's see. Can you see my screen? I can't see your faces, so just let me know if you can.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, so I'm Marian Abrahamson. I'm here with my colleague Jennifer Malone. We are here, as Commissioner Joseph said, to provide you some information on the housing element update of the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. So here you can see a graphic that depicts the quadrants of the overall Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan update. We are referring to these as chapters. So the housing element falls under a community and built environment chapter. As Ms. Dickens touched on previously, we are looking at how we can link housing, mobility, and land use moving forward through this update as one of our strategic plan action items as well. So just some data to provide a backdrop to the work that we're doing. So the average household size in Hillsborough County as of 2018 was 2.63 persons per household, which is slightly larger than the city of Tampa and city of Temple Terrace. The city of Plant City comes in at 2.85, which is slightly larger than the county. So the housing by types in the county, you can see here in the last group, all the way to the right, is primarily composed of single-family detached at nearly 60% of the housing stock. 7.2% of the housing stock is single-family attached, 24.3% is apartments, and 9.2% is mobile homes. So some other information that is tying into or informing the work that we are doing is the issue of housing affordability in the county. So the standard is about 30% of income, meaning that folks that are spending about or over 30% of their income on housing are considered to be cost burden in regards to housing. So Hillsborough County residents are currently spending about 33% of their income on housing. And when we look at the combination of housing and transportation, the standard for being cost burdened with those two combined is 45%. So anything over 45% is considered to be cost burden. And Hillsborough County residents are currently spending on average 58% of their total income on housing and transportation combined. So again, some background to what we have been doing. This initial work that's been going into the housing element update in this run started back in summer 2019, during which staff reviewed each of the goals, objectives, and policies. And here, this visual, you can see one of the exercises that we did was cut out each of the goals, objectives, and policies and arrange them on a table. This helped kind of provide an exercise for us more visually minded folks to see how the element currently flows. This helped identify topic gaps that currently exist in the housing element, and also helped us identify any policies for further discussion moving forward. So here we are now in summer 2020. Moving forward, we have our working groups starting this month, which I will get into later on in the presentation. And we will be doing some additional stakeholder involvement, which will inform the policies and help refine the policies moving forward. So now I will hand it off to Jennifer Malone, who will provide an update on how we have been taking land use, transportation, and housing into consideration in this update.
Hi, Jennifer Malone here. I hope everyone can hear me okay. So I'll just take over. This is Melissa Dickens already provided the Planning Commission a great update on where we are with our strategic action plan. So some of that work has been informing the housing element update. Myself and Marianne are part of the group that is looking at linking land use, transportation, and housing. So there has already been a meeting with the agency and department representatives of each element for a framework discussion on how we're going to move forward on linking these ideas through the element update. And next slide, Marianne. Thank you. We've also been looking at the workshop policy statements from the Board of County Commissioners. So these are going to also inform where we can go with this update, what types of policy language that needs to be in the plan. The Board of County Commissioners has talked about building a multimodal transportation network. They want to support transit-oriented development, providing jobs concurrently with housing. Maintaining a range of affordable housing is also very important, as well as creating affordable housing where we have invested in the infrastructure and transit. We don't want the affordable housing to be out without access to transit or that infrastructure. So that is a very important policy statement from the Board of County Commissioners. And on the next slide, we just have once, because it's so important, it takes up its own slide, that the commissioners have stated that they'd like to look at density bonuses, inclusionary zoning, that they'd like to make sure that the low, very low, and moderate income housing is accessible to employment centers and mass transit. So what we found through this project is that there are a lot of these, next slide please. Thank you. There's quite a bit of these themes already in the plan, but there's certainly room for improvement. Our plan does speak to locating very low and moderate income housing accessible to these employment centers. It already speaks to public transportation. It speaks to farm worker housing being within proximity, but there is certainly room for improvement to build upon these themes and make these policies better. So this is a map that has also come out of the group, the Linking Land Use and Transportation Strategic Planning Group that we're working on. As I stated earlier, myself and Marianne are involved in this group, and we've been coordinating with Beth with the MPO and other members on these maps and these deliverables that will help inform this update. So this is looking at the redevelopable land and the vacant land within its proximity to existing transit. And if that transit has a 0 to 30 minute headway or a 30 to 60 minute headway. And I know that there's a lot of information on this slide. So on the next slide, we have zoomed in a little bit to just show the city of Tampa, like northern city of Tampa, and a little bit of unincorporated Hillsborough County. But we can see on those dark green lines, the transit lines that have the 0 to 30 minute headways. The lighter green shows those 30 to 60 minute headways. And then we can see the opportunities to either where there's vacant land, which would be in the pink colors, or that are identified as redevelopable, which is that red. So where are the opportunities that we can look at the infill and also make sure that it's close to the transit opportunities that already exist. And then on the next slide, I've again zoomed in to give a contrast. This is south of 60. So kind of in the Brandon area and South County. And so we can kind of see the differences in where the opportunities are in this area of the county. Next, we have a map that shows the affordable housing sites and the proximity to transit. Again, we want to make sure that the residents of affordable housing sites have access to transit. So this is actually very encouraging. On the next slide, you'll see, again, the same viewpoint, this northern city of Tampa is a little bit of unincorporated county. So we can see clusters of these affordable housing developments and if they are within proximity to transit. And then on the next slide, again, we're going to be south of 60 in the Brandon area. And there's just a few outliers that are not within that quarter-mile walking buffer of transit, but overall, this is encouraging to inform our Next, Melissa Dickens, I went ahead of myself. And then of course we're looking at the missing middle housing. If you're not familiar, missing middle is kind of that in between. It's not single family detached. It's not really mid-rise or high rise, but everything in between. It's a bungalow court or townhomes. So how can these housing types fit along the infill parcels, along these boulevards and these places that are really ripe for redevelopment, and that there's a lot of opportunity. And then I know Melissa Dickens kind of touched on this earlier in her presentation. We've also been looking at this white paper that one of the NPO fellows did for our group, which is in your packet. So something that came out of this white paper was how do communities get to transit and affordable housing? And so one thing that some researchers pulled together, there was a survey of 12 developers and 7 governmental agencies. And then what we have on this slide is the results of that survey combined with an analysis of transit-oriented development projects. And these are the key findings that kind of came out. Of course, collaboration is incredibly important. We're coordinating with our own working groups, moving forward with HART, as well as county staff and other stakeholders. Permanence of transit was important, frequent, fast, and convenient service, streetscape and infrastructure improvements, as well as a prominent visual profile. A challenge cited was the local, state, and federal policies don't award points or credits for land costs. In the white paper, the fellow also took a look at some case studies that we're using to inform our work. Each of these case studies had some themes. So overall, it's a policy language in Denver, Colorado, Cleveland, Ohio, and Arlington County, Virginia. There was always some policy that went along with what the result was. In Denver, there was adopted language in both the Regional Transportation District's strategic plan, as well as the city and county comprehensive plan to move these concepts forward. In Cleveland, there was a citywide plan which promoted a goal to support transit along high density development in targeted areas, as well as a zoning overlay. Arlington, Virginia also had a zoning overlay that really supported some of these concepts. There's also a lot of collaboration done between different groups within these areas, as well as some different financing tools that each of these areas utilized to get to this desired outcome. And so I will turn it back over to Marianne. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. So as I had mentioned earlier, the working groups will be kicking off this week. So here are some of the folks that we feel will be integral moving forward. And this is not a conclusive list, but as in regards to county staff, of course, the Affordable Housing Services Department is key, development services, economic development, and the county's attorney's office. And some other stakeholders, again, not conclusive, USF, the University of Florida IFAS Extension Office, and HART as well. We hope to maintain individuals from these departments in the working groups moving forward. So some of the topics that we will be discussing in the working groups range from something as seemingly simple as terminology, but in regards to terminology, we want to make sure that everyone is on the same page and speaking the same language moving forward, and we're all comfortable with the same terms, especially the implementing agencies like the county staff who will be taking this and moving forward with applications moving forward. And then we also get into migrant farm worker housing, self-help housing communities, accessory dwelling units, and inclusionary zoning is a big one. The affordable housing density bonus, group homes and the special needs population, and impact fees, development requirements, and processing procedures for affordable housing. So there's a lot to discuss. And again, this is not a conclusive list. We anticipate that more topics will be added to this list as we go forward. So in regards to outreach that's outside of the working groups, there is a phone-based survey that will be, to my understanding, concluding in January 2021. I believe these will kick off after the election season to not conflict with any type of surveys in regards to the election. And then we are also looking at a potential consultant for the affordable housing density bonus and to conduct focused stakeholder interviews outside of the working groups again. So that concludes our presentation, and we stand for questions.
All right, thank you both very much. Any questions or comments from discussion from the commissioners on this item? Once, oh, there they go. All right, Commissioner Kress.
Well, first off, really well done. I love that you're linking so strongly the transportation and the land use together. I know just, my narrow downtown focus is more on the redevelopment of parcels. And from what I understand, it feels a lot like the Florida Building Code and the local codes are preventing some of that adaptive reuse, not setting the parking codes aside. And I wondered if redevelopment or these kind of, small parcel, kind of like domain homes type things will also be part of your study area.
So I don't know if Jen, you want to take a shot at that, but I think that if I understand your question, so those maps that were shown as far as the redevelopable potential parcels and the transit maps will help guide that conversation moving forward, because then we can identify where those properties exist. As part of our outreach as well, we'd like to speak to some of these developers that have to, deal with the regulations that are in place every day and get their feedback to see, from their perspective, what is working, what is not working, what are the barriers to getting affordable housing development projects approved. And so we're certainly going to be looking at that as well. If that answered your question, please let me know.
Yeah, thank you. I wondered if you were going to involve the private sector. I think that's exactly the answers they're going to give you. So thank you. Well done.
Thank you. Commissioner Green, I believe is who I saw next. I'll get to you next, Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Marianne, Jennifer, for the presentation. I think this is I like the direction this is headed in. I think it's in terms of establishing a policy foundation. I think this will go a long way. But I have to ask the question, and I'm sort of looking sort of a little bit beyond the update to the comprehensive plan, the housing element. But do you think that this could lead to a more, let's say, comprehensive housing strategy or strategic plan for housing in the county?
Marianne sits on the AHAB, so I think maybe you'd be best suited to answer that question. I can certainly chime in.
Yeah, well, we certainly hope so, and I think that was part of the intent of establishing the STANS working group from the strategic. I always confuse this because there's so many acronyms, but the Linking Land Use and Transportation Group. That was certainly one of the goals coming out of that group, is how can we approach this from a strategic standpoint and kind of use this as a template going forward to best inform not only the housing element update, but work beyond that as well. So I think you're right. I think this is a start to that, and I hope that our county counterparts will agree and be on board to use this at least as a base moving forward. And we would certainly be open to working with them to establish something like that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Green. Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. I just have a question regarding one of the examples that you gave in the report. You talked a lot about Denver, and I think you mentioned Sheridan as the example, but there's several places in Denver along their light rail line where they've converted park and rides to affordable housing or mixed use. So is that something that you'll intend to work on with HART? I know obviously there's a few park and rides that are in the unincorporated, but could that be a potential strategy going forward to maybe realign some of these park and rides so that maybe there could be a housing element at these locations?
Definitely think that that is something that we can look at moving forward, and that's an excellent point. I myself was in Denver earlier this summer, safely traveling, and I noticed a lot of that as well. I think that the Sheridan Apartments example did show those three key points: the collaboration, the financial incentives, and the policy, which is probably why it was discussed so heavily. But we could definitely discuss that with Hart moving forward, and I'll let Beth chime in if she has anything on that.
Thank you, Beth Alden, MPO Director, and thank you for the question, Commissioner Marino. I didn't want to make Jennifer and Mary Ann answer the questions about coordination with Hart, since they've been, largely relying on our team to do that. But I have to say that Hart has been really fabulous and is very interested in this conversation. And so the first step with Hart, I think, is coming to consensus on what are some of these corridors that are of strategic interest to both Hart and to the county for economic development and redevelopment, and for housing purposes and infill and redevelopment as part of a potential affordable housing strategy. So we've been working with Hart on the idea of creating kind of a policy map of corridors where they would, that they see a strategic significance. So as they have resources, they would focus on allocating resources, for transit service in these corridors. I think, just all of us coming to agreement on what those corridors are, is a step forward from where we have been.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Marino. I believe I saw Commissioner Rodriguez pop up next.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. When speaking about streetscape, just the importance of making sure your public works department is talking to the transit agency. And I'm talking about connections to mass transit from the affordable housing. And in particular, we need to make sure we have adequate sidewalks, bike lanes, street lighting, just those safe routes, whether it's walking to school or just walking home from the bus stop. That's something that we've really been lacking here in Hillsborough County and a lot of counties in Florida. Our pedestrian and bicyclist deaths are just completely unreasonable for the conditions that we have. Another thing is in terms of terminology and speaking to members of the community, we all speak of affordable housing, but really workforce housing seems to be something that the business community seems to embrace a little more than the term affordable housing. So that's always something to consider in how we conduct our public outreach. And the other thing that I want to speak of is while we talk about putting these capital improvements in, what we also need to look at are these amenities have a life cycle. And once they're constructed, there needs to be an ongoing operations and maintenance budget to keep them working properly, be it bicycle lanes or sidewalks. Over time, these facilities, they degrade. And bike lanes in particular, I mean, it's something as simple as how the grass grows and gets into the pavement, and sooner over time you're going to be pushing that bicyclist into the car travel lane. And I don't think we've done a really good job on funding the operations and maintenance of our facilities. So in terms of policy perspective, that's something that also needs to be remembered, not just getting the the capital investment constructed, but also taking care of it over the life cycle of that amenity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think you're anticipating some of the topics that will come back for discussion during the mobility element. Just to be clear, you'll be hearing about the linkages between housing and transportation when you hear about that element as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Powell, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Melissa, at the last meeting that we had, I was talking or seeing if we had any studies as it related to like affordable housing, if we could maybe have like a study that could address the like design implementation of like affordable housing projects to figure out a way, you know, if we could have them designed, you know, to be more cost friendly, I think is probably the best way like to put that. So in this housing element that we have, you know, here, do we have any like thoughts towards, you know, the design of like affordable housing, you know, projects in ways that we can make it actually more affordable for like the builders and developers to, you know, to build them that are only, you know, that only apply to someone with an affordable housing project, not to, you know, JQ Public, but just for an affordable housing developer or development?
Yes, I think the goal of the, well, one of the things Marianne mentioned was that we were looking at hiring a consultant to assist with some looking at some of the incentives that are given to developers, but also where some of the obstacles might be to achieving affordable housing. And I think that was a very tactful way of her saying, where are there the pinch points for that it's making it cost more? You know, is it that there's additional landscaping requirements or other, you know, requirements that are making the housing more costly that we might be able to look at and address. So that is something that's part of why we want to talk with some of those development community stakeholders, some who we see who are developing in certain parts of the community, but are not perhaps in the unincorporated county in particular, to ask some questions about why that is. Is there something, you know, structurally in the requirements in the code that are making them not interested because it costs more? Or is it something about that there's a lack of transit access for their potential buyers or renters? So those are the types of things that we want to delve deeper into, because from this vantage point, it's hard to tell exactly what some of the obstacles to getting more in the development community interested in doing affordable housing are.
Okay, all right. And if you had to restate that earlier, that was already stated earlier, I apologize. I've had some technical difficulties on my end. So everyone cut out there for about 5 minutes. So I apologize if to make you repeat yourself. Thank you.
No. It's all good.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other thought that actually two thoughts that came up. I think this issue of affordable housing needs to be clear when we use that term. We need to be a little bit more specific about what are we talking about. Are we talking about affordable home ownership, or are we talking about affordable rentals? Because they're two totally, I shouldn't say totally different, but very different sort of housing markets, let's say. But the other thing that came to mind is Jennifer and Marianne, on your list of I'm not sure if they were indicated as priorities or whatever there towards the end of your presentation. There's one line you had there that I think is going to take a lot more in-depth sort of analysis, and that one had to do with inclusionary zoning policy, let's say. That's going to be a really tough one, especially here, Okay, and I would say that one may need to be pulled out and sort of looked at, like I say, in greater depth a lot sooner.
Yeah, and that's a great point. That is, so with our working groups moving forward, we've separated each meeting into a different topic, and we've assigned certain, or not assigned, but we've suggested certain staff that we would like to be present. As far as for the inclusionary zoning meeting, we would like the county attorney's office to be present because we understand that there may be some barriers or issues to that. But I'm certainly open to maybe some suggestions on, you know, when to have that meeting. If you think we should have that, but sooner rather than later. I don't think that's what I think that might be a good idea because that might take longer to flesh out.
And just to further clarify on Marian's point, and yes, that is a great point about the inclusionary zoning. We both were able to attend an excellent presentation at Florida APA. There was a representative from the Florida Affordable Housing Coalition there, as well as the assistant city manager of, I believe, Palm Beach County. And they actually have been able to implement some inclusionary zoning tools in their area. So we'll definitely be looking to, as that is a case study, probably be reaching out more to the Florida Affordable Housing Coalition. But excellent point about the inclusionary zoning, and that will be a big topic to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I bring it up is because inclusionary housing, it has sort of two major components, and one I think you did have on your list, of which is incentives, incentive based, or actually fee based, okay, and the other is unit based, okay, there was an excellent study that I came across, was done out in California, Berkeley, a while back, that talks about when and how to implement inclusionary zoning. So you might want to definitely take a quick look at something like that also.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've jotted that down, so I'm gonna look that up. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Green. Are there any more comments or discussions from the commissioners? For my part, I just wanted to say this is an excellent presentation. Obviously, both of you have been dealing with me on this for a while now, so seeing it come to fruition and move forward is great. My two comments I would put on this, two things I'd like to see going forward with this. More clarity, and this echoes pretty much the sentiments that everybody has put out so far. Clarity specifically in defining constituents. We throw the term out there, affordable housing, nebulously, and then we start to look at bus routes and trains, right? So who are the people served by affordable housing? Who are they when they're outside of the urban service area? Who are they when they're in downtown Tampa? Who are they when they're by USF, right? We have people all over the county in these conditions. Who are they? That's what I want to know out of this exercise for sure. The second thing I want to know at the end of this exercise for sure is what are the geographies that serve and support these people, right? It's easy to just look in the city of Tampa and pick economic corridors and say, well, duh, let's just put some more money there, or just look for the lowest income areas and say, duh, it needs to go there. But that's probably not the best step, right? So what are really the geographies that support these people we find, And I think by understanding those two things and getting clarity on who needs to be served and where, right, those services, where those people in those services should go, I think when we start to talk about these things like, workforce housing or affordable housing or whatever it fleshes out to be, transportation, I think the community will be served better than by these kind of broad sweeping ideas that we've been, kind of used to doing, where we go to another state or go to another locale and say, hey, look, they're doing this here. It can work in Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County is a pretty big place, and I don't doubt that it could work in certain places in Hillsborough County. But to take the assumption that just broad base, it's going to work in Hillsborough County, like that's, so I'd like to see more specificity and more directed, this type of housing here for these type of people and this type of transportation this type of development, and it should change when we see other areas. So I'd like to see, and that's not easy. I know that I'm asking for a lot, but that's what I'd like to hopefully see at the end of this, out of this effort. So I just wanted to add those sentiments to it. All right. All right, and thank you all for the work on this, and we will all look forward to the rest of it coming forward. And with that, we will move on to our next item, item number 11, which is an action item, apparently. All right, it's an action item for the discussion of the executive director's evaluation, and that will be presented by our executive director, Melissa Zornita.
Good afternoon, commissioners. The agenda item that's before you looks a lot like what was before you last month. I did not get any feedback from any of you all about modifications to what I proposed in the form. What is proposed is striking out the section previously called attainment of the agency's strategic plan goals, changing that to attainment of the agency's strategic plan priorities and putting in the actual strategic plan priorities. So that would align it with the strategic plan that Ms. Dickens discussed earlier in the meeting, that covers the variety of different topics from agency enhancements, regional collaboration, all the way up to linking land use and transportation. So we don't, I want to be clear that we will continue to track many of the things that we have been tracking over the past years in this section of my evaluation. We just felt that they fit within one of our strategic plan goals. And then there were other things in the strategic plan goals that were not being captured in this section because it had not been updated to match the recently adopted strategic plan. So that is what is in front of you all. If you want to take action today to change, basically it is all it is changing the evaluation form. If there's further direction you would like and other changes, I'm happy to take that as well today.
Right. Being that it's an action item, I assume I have to open it up for comments from the public. You see anyone signed up? Any hands raised? Probably not. I don't have any hands on my side. No. All right. And then I will kick it over to commissioners for comments or questions on this item. Seeing none. I wanted to make a comment myself. I guess I'll go ahead and throw it out there. The only difference, the only comment I have in the change, the addition of the strategies, is that I think we kind of lose the quantified elements that we had at the end in the section that's been updated. Being someone who was here back in the day when those changes kind of happened, I remember that there was kind of a emotion at that time, probably led by Commissioner Pike, who loves numbers, to try and get more numerical things tied to, you know, the way we measure, you know, your efforts in that area. So I'd like to see that kind of quantifications stick to whatever we, you know, if it's a strategic plan or whatever, we come up with some little categories that we can quantify in the strategic plan if it is. So that's my only comment. I'd like to see that emotion of quantification kind of carried forward in the strategic plan here as it gets moved into to take the place there. That's my only major comment. Obviously, there's a lot of editing and stuff that still needs to go on. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman. This is John Dix, and I'm sorry I had that technical difficulty, but I was trying to get through to you, and it's interesting that you're honing in on the very thing that I wanted to address, and that is with the changes that have been suggested here, it removes any objectivity out of the evaluation, and it makes it all very subjective. And I think that's most a rather difficult task to make. Also, subject the executive director to, a lot of wonder as to whether, she is really adequately fulfilling the role that we expect. Like we had in there, making 25 presentations and that kind of thing, and we eliminated that. So I concur with you, and I don't know if we can adjust that now or sometime in the future, but it would make logical sense to me to have some things where it is objective rather than simply 100% subjective.
Well, I can offer this, and if last year in February, the report that was presented to you all, there was a report presented to you all that took both the performance measures that were here in the current evaluation and also reported on the strategic plan. And that's where this idea of beginning to combine this stemmed from, because I think you all saw that there was a lot of synergy between those two items. So I think I could probably bring this back one more time if you would like, taking some of the quantifiable items that were in the old evaluation and kind of embedding them. For example, the 25 presentations would fit very well under building planning partnerships. The 90% of customer service surveys with a positive rating might fit under citizen engagement, or making more user-friendly website enhancements would fit under that section, or maybe it would fit under technology. We'd probably have to make a couple of decisions like that would be a bit challenging, but I think we could probably find a home for each of the things that are in the current evaluation, if that would make you all feel more comfortable. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I know it would for me.
Yeah, sure.
And we might, if you have to lose something and add something too, based on the stuff you're seeing in the strategic plan, that's fine too. It's just having that, like you said, like Commissioner Dick said, so that you're, it's really for you, so that you're not wondering, and there's not this group of people just nebulously figuring out your future. So yeah, I'd definitely like to see that.
Okay. I think that's very doable and might end up with the best of both out of this. Yes.
All right. So do we need a motion on this, or do we?
I mean, I think if there's consensus to bring it back the next time based on that direction, I'm fine with that. I don't know that we need to have a motion.
All right. Okay.
I'm sure Tracy would pipe in if we.
No, I'm waiting for Tracy but I'm not hearing him, so we must be on the right track.
This is Tracy. It sounds like you simply want to continue the discussion on this till the next meeting.
Yes.
So we are going to need a motion to continue at least, because it is an action item.
Well, you can do that by direction or by motion.
Okay. Well, we'll just do it by direction then. Direct you to continue to bring it back next time.
Sounds good. Do that.
All right. So action item. All right. On to our next item, which is the executive director's report. Again, back to you, Ms. Juanita.
Thank you. Hopefully everyone received in your email my executive director's report a little after noon today. And it outlined a long list of different things that I or other staff have been attending over the last month. A particular item I just wanted to highlight because you all know how what a labor of love the county's comprehensive plan update has been for our agency. And the One Water section was transmitted by the Board of County Commissioners on August 27th. So we're thrilled that was moved forward with a lot of positive feedback on that. It should be adopted by the board at their October 22nd hearing. I'll knock on wood just to make sure nothing goes awry in that regard. They did move forward the other amendments that were a part of that cycle of amendments. That two of note that were different. One, the county's corridor amendment that looked at context classification for different roadway corridors was deferred by the county to a later cycle of amendments. They wanted to look at some of the questions that were raised by you all, by the BOCC, and look at tying that in with some of the other aspects of the update of the comp plan. So more to come on that. I expect it will come back to you all in its next evolution. The other item was, you may recall, there was a small scale plan amendment on Northdale Maybury Highway, the old Piccadilly site. And that one actually was denied by the Board of County Commissioners. So I thought you all might be interested in the rationale behind that, because it was, the idea was that there was a lot of wetlands on the site, and the commissioners were concerned about raising the density on the wetlands. They wanted to see the density just raised on the uplands, even if that meant that go higher, because they didn't want there to be any, they didn't care for the idea of the additional entitlements being on the wetland portion of the property. So I thought that was an interesting way that amendment went. If there are any questions on any of the other items on the list that have occurred, I'd be happy to go over those. I did want to give you an update on our budget and contracts. The county should be adopting the budget on this Thursday evening. At this point, our budget essentially remains at a flat. So it will remain basically status quo, both in operating and personnel. There may be a little bit of personnel increases to cover health insurance costs, but there are no performance or merit increases, cost of living increases planned in the FY21 budget. But we are thankful that at this point our operating and personnel are at least made whole, and that there are no cuts being requested of our agency for the next fiscal year. We have a number of projects that you all have been seeing every month in the consultant breakdown that is provided in the backup. A number of them, as you know, have been delayed because of COVID. Things like the outreach that Mary Ann spoke about was delayed a good 6, or probably by the time we're done, 9 months, because of COVID and wanting to not take know that people were not providing good attention to growth issues when they were, dealing with public health and, unemployment and issues like that initially. So a number of those projects, we have been able to work with the county to roll over the money in the allotment so that they can continue to be funded through the same funding that we had from this year in next year's budget. So that will also benefit the RP2 and the Waimama land use studies, because those as well, we had anticipated concluding them by the beginning of September and have had to extend their time frame so that we can hopefully get out this fall and do some in-person outreach. So many of the things that are on the contract list, you will see them show up again next month as we try and close out a couple of the contracts, but then they will continue into the next fiscal year. So I wanted to make that clear. We also have a pretty long list of upcoming events that is at the bottom of my report, and hopefully you'll take this and put a number of them on your calendar. We have some surveys that are ongoing right now related to studies that the MPO is doing on Vision Zero corridors. Those are all in the unincorporated county, roads like Sheldon Road, 15th Street. They are looking at them for quick operational safety improvements that can be made, and they're very interested in public comment on those over the course of the rest of this month. Next Tuesday is the Vision Zero Leadership Summit, and they have a number of speakers. I'm going to be on a panel discussing the role that development review and land use can play in creating more safer development patterns. But there are a number of other really interesting and exciting speakers to hear at that summit. Again, all virtual. On next Friday, next week's a jam-packed week, we are hosting a value-added mobility study virtual knowledge share workshop. So what does that mean? So that means we have been conducting with USF and Professor Hafen from the Urban and Regional Planning Department a study of what are the opportunities to capture some of the value around some of the mobility improvements that are made, to then infuse that back into the community. And so how can we leverage that there might be these opportunities that, because of the transportation improvement, are created on the land use side? So this has been a collaborative project between our transportation team and land use team and the University of South Florida. And that's going to be another interactive workshop. On Friday, October 9th, we will be having a lunch and learn session on the history of planning in Florida with Alan Bliss, the executive director of the Jacksonville Historical Society, who has done a good bit of research on Tampa, even though he's now in Jacksonville. And then on our next Info Barbecue will be held on October 19th, and that will be featuring Todd Littman, who's the executive director of the Victoria Transport Policy Institute, who will be discussing the concept of managed lanes and how they can be used effectively in the community. What are some of the pros to managed lanes and what are some of the cons? So that will be an interactive opportunity. He's also going to be speaking at the MPO and in a workshop fashion, but this will be an opportunity for the community to get to have some question and answers with Mr. Littman. And then at the end of the month is the Planning Commission's Planning and Design Awards, which I'm sure Commissioner Powell, as chair of the Public Information Committee, sorry, my brain went blank there, we'll have perhaps more to say on that, but we're going to be doing that virtually as well. So a lot of virtual events in the next 6 weeks, so wanted to make sure to cover all of them. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Just make sure our commissioners didn't have any comments or questions on any of that before I move on quickly. Not seeing anybody. So we will move on to our second to last item, item number 13, other business, chair's business. I have none. Old business, any new business? Going once, going twice. Committee reports. There we go. Commissioner Powell, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will give the report that Melissa was just speaking about, since that was fresh on everyone's minds. Last week, the jury met to make the selections for the 38th Annual Planning and Design Awards. Some really great projects were selected and all that. Special thanks to the 3 judges that were outside of Hillsborough County. Those are, and if I mispronounce these, I apologize to those folks. Alara Gucher, Andre Anderson, and Sylvia Vargas. The design awards are going to be held on Tuesday, October the 27th at 5 p.m. and they're going to be done via video production. And that's all I have for that one. And I will go into affordable housing update. We met this morning, and I guess the biggest takeaway would be the board is still trying to have this subcommittee for the land trust, getting that structured together. There was a lot of discussion on county surplus lands and those that are been designated to the affordable housing board, and whether or not which properties we wanted to keep, which ones we wanted to, give back. And there's been some discussions on, how do we actually fund the community land trust itself, and then figure out a way in order to, do what its intended purpose would be. Unfortunately, we don't have what its intended purpose is because it's not really fully formed. So we're going to be looking at hiring a consultant, someone to give us guidance on the best ways and practices to, form these community land trusts, whether to make them a part of the county and bring them under the county umbrella, or set it up as a separate 501, 3C, because there are some different, advantages and disadvantages, to both, specifically with funding and staff support. So that's really the crux of that, and that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you very much, Commissioner Powell. You have a question, Commissioner Rodriguez, or you?
Yes, I do.
A report.
Before I start my report, question for Commissioner Powell. How or will the planning commissioners be involved in the in the presentation? I mean, usually, in the live presentation, we're up there presenting awards. Will the commissioners have a role in this time around, or are we going to do another format?
Great question. Thank you, Tony. The last time that we had this discussion, I don't know if we've really, we knew we're going to do like a video online format, but we were going to have, try to involve some of the commissioners, in doing some interviews and things like that. Melissa may be better to answer that question because I think she'll be a little more guidance on that and how it's actually going to work out.
Yeah, I think in terms of the video production, we're sorting through now that the judges have made their selections, how many of those are going to be, videos narrated by somebody. Brenda McLaughlin has been kind enough to offer his services free of charge, which is very generous of him to narrate that. And how many will be actually, like we were thinking, merit and then excellence and that outstanding. We definitely would go and have an interview with the person or a representative of the project. So there may be some instances where we need to call on some planning commissioners to help meet us to facilitate that. Certainly there's not going to be a commissioner for every single one handing a trophy. That part I don't think we're going to be able to replicate. We haven't figured out the logistics of doing that yet.
Very good. All right, thank you. Now for my report, City of Tampa's Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, we held a meeting on July 15th, and we received a report on how their Housing and Community Development Division was performing over the past month, as far as housing production, zoning, gentrification, and outreach programs. But the real thing of note is we have amended our committee rules of order to allow an elected official onto our AHAC. So that was approved by our committee and went back to City Council for their approval and ultimately their disposition as to who that elected official would be. And that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Rodriguez. Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. So the MPO meeting that was on August 31st, there was a tip roll forward amendment, and there being actually some discussion about safe routes to school, specifically the Sulphur Springs K-8 school, and kind of how to advance those projects and make sure they're still on schedule. And then also we have a few status updates on THEA projects and HART projects. And for those who may not know, Hart is realigning a lot of their services, obviously due to budget cuts, but they're also trying to replace some of the services, the local services that were lost during Mission Max.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner Marino. All right. Seeing no one else for comments or questions or discussion or committee reports, I guess that is all we have for this meeting. Check one more time with my commissioners, going once, going twice. All right, that's it. And before I adjourn this meeting, I'd like to remind everybody that we have our public hearings coming up right after this, starting at 5:30, maybe a couple minutes after there. So everybody quickly run out, grab something to eat, use the bathroom, and I will see everybody back on that other side. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.